Toronto.
Table of Contents, Toronto.
All about Toronto, with visiting and touring information, geography, history, attractions, and other points of interest.
Dr. Sydney Soclof. Dr. Sydney22@gmail.com. 2022. Narration by Dr. Sydney Soclof.
Zoe Phonemes.
And Nathan Koltov. For a more complete discussion of YouTube navigation, please go to this video using the link here.
Ontario.
This shows the 13 provinces and territories of Canada.
These are the relative areas of the regions of Canada. Ontario, at 30%, is the largest province, with Quebec in second place at 26%.
Ontario borders the U.S. states Michigan, New York, Minnesota, and the Canadian provinces Manitoba, Nunavut, and Quebec. Ontario is the only province that borders the Great Lakes. It touches 4 of the 5 lakes, with Lake Michigan being entirely with the U.S.
This is a relief map of Ontario. Most of Ontario is relatively flat and of moderately low elevation.
Here is the population of the provinces of Canada, going east to west. The total population of Canada is 38 million.
The total population of Canada is 38 million. About the same as the state of California.
Ontario is Canada's most populous province, with almost 40% of the total population.
Quebec is the second province in population with 8.6 million people.
Almost all of Ontario's population and arable land is in the far southern part near the Great Lakes. This is especially true of the area around Toronto. Northern Ontario is sparsely populated with very cold winters and is densely forested.
Ontario is home to Canada's most populous city, Toronto, which is also the provincial capital. Ontario is also home to the nation's capital city of Ottawa.
Chapter 2. Introduction to Toronto.
Chapter 3. Population of North American cities.
Toronto is the largest city in Canada, but ranks only 9th in the population of all cities in North America.
Toronto is the largest city in Canada, with a metropolitan area population of 6.2 million. Toronto is the capital city of the province of Ontario and the largest city in Canada.
Toronto has a city population of 2.7 million. And 6 million in the Greater Toronto Area, making it the largest in Canada.
Toronto is Canada's financial and commercial centre.
Toronto is on the northern shore of Lake Ontario, which forms part of the border between Canada and the United States. Toronto's access to Atlantic shipping via the St. Lawrence Seaway and major U.S. industrial centers via the Great Lakes has enabled Toronto to become an important international trading center.
Since the second half of the 20th century, the city has grown phenomenally. From a sedate provincial town known as Toronto the Good to a lively, thriving, cosmopolitan metropolitan area.
Toronto is the center of an urban agglomeration known as the Golden Horseshoe on the shore of Lake Ontario. As a global city, Toronto is a center of business, finance, arts, and culture and is recognized as one of the most multicultural and cosmopolitan cities in the world. Chapter 4. The History of Toronto.
Indigenous peoples have traveled through and inhabited the Toronto area, situated on a broad sloping plateau interspersed with rivers, deep ravines, and urban forest, for more than 10,000 years.
In the 17th century, the area was a crucial point for travel, with the Humber and Rouge rivers providing a shortcut to the upper Great Lakes. These routes were known as the Toronto Passage.
The British established the town of York in 1793 and later designated it as the capital of Upper Canada. York was later renamed Toronto. During the War of 1812, American forces attacked York. The Americans subsequently plundered the town and set fire to the legislative buildings. York was renamed and incorporated as the City of Toronto in 1834, and became the capital of the province of Ontario during the Canadian Confederation in 1867.
Toronto became a major destination for immigrants to Canada in the second half of the 19th century and well into the 20th century.
Chapter 5. Toronto today.
The diverse population of Toronto reflects its current and historical role as an important destination for immigrants to Canada. With over 50% of residents belonging to a visible minority population group, and over 200 distinct ethnic origins represented among its inhabitants. While most Torontonians speak English as their primary language, over 160 languages are spoken in the city. Toronto is a prominent center for music, theater, motion picture and television production, and is home to the headquarters of Canada's major national broadcast networks and media outlets.
Toronto's various cultural institutions, which include numerous museums and galleries, festivals and public events, entertainment districts, national historic sites, and sports activities, attract over 25 million tourists annually.
Toronto is known for its many skyscrapers and high-rise buildings, particularly the tallest freestanding structure in the Western Hemisphere, the CN Tower.
The city is home to the Toronto Stock Exchange, the headquarters of Canada's 5 largest banks, and the headquarters of many large Canadian and multinational corporations.
Toronto's economy is highly diversified with strengths in technology, design, financial services, life sciences, education, arts, fashion, business services, environmental innovation, food services, and tourism.
Victorian-era bay and gable houses are a distinct architectural style of residence ubiquitous throughout the older neighborhoods of Toronto. The Distillery District holds the most extensive collection of preserved Victorian industrial architecture in North America. The West Don Lands is one of many former industrial sites in the downtown area that has undergone redevelopment.
Nathan Phillips Square is the city's main square. The square includes a reflecting pool that is converted into an ice rink during the winter.
Opened in 1907, the Royal Alexandra Theatre is North America's oldest continuously operating theatre. Toronto is the third largest Sintefo English-language theatre, behind only London and New York.
The Art Gallery of Ontario is an art museum and the second most visited museum in Toronto after the Royal Ontario Museum.
The Hockey Hall of Fame is a museum dedicated to ice hockey and a Hall of Fame. This is a view of the Financial District, Toronto's central business district.
This is a view of Chinatown on Spadina Avenue. More than half of the city's population belongs to a visible minority group.
The Toronto City Hall is the seat of the municipal government of Toronto. This is the University College at the University of Toronto. University College is one of 11 colleges of the University of Toronto.
Toronto's Mars Discovery District is a center for research in biomedicine.
The Toronto Transit Commission operates North America's largest and busiest streetcar system.
This is an interior view of the Toronto Pearson International Airport Terminal 1. Toronto Pearson serves as the international airport for the Greater Toronto Area. Highway 401 is a 400 series highway that passes west-east through the Greater Toronto Area. The volume of vehicles that use Toronto's portion of Highway 401 makes it the busiest highway in North America and one of the widest. This is a map of the Greater Toronto Area. This is a map of Toronto with major traffic routes. Also shown are the boundaries of 6 former municipalities, which now form the current city of Toronto. This is the flag of the province of Ontario. This is the Ontario Science Centre.
Chapter 6. Toronto Sports.
The Toronto Maple Leafs are a professional ice hockey club in the National Hockey League.
The Toronto Maple Leafs are a professional ice hockey team based in Toronto and are members of the National Hockey League.
The Rogers Centre, originally named Sky Dome, is a multipurpose stadium.
The Toronto Blue Jays are a Canadian professional baseball team in the American League East Division. Rogers Centre is home to the Toronto Blue Jays of Major League Baseball.
The Toronto Blue Jays host the Detroit Tigers at the Rogers Centre.
The Toronto Argonauts are a professional Canadian football team competing in the Canadian Football League. The team was founded in 1873 and is the oldest professional sports team in North America still using its original name. This is the BMO Field, home to the Toronto Argonauts. The BMO Field is an outdoor stadium home to the Toronto Argonauts and the Toronto Football Club.
Chapter 7. Toronto Points of Interest.
Chapter 8. Toronto Orientation. Toronto is an accessible city to find your way and get around.
This is a map of the Greater Toronto Area. This is a map of downtown Toronto. To be familiarized with the central area of Toronto, some good reference points are helpful, such as the cruise terminal, CN Tower, and the Eaton Centre.
A major reference access is Yonge Street running north-south, and Queen Street and Dundas Street going east-west.
This more detailed map shows Eaton Centre, Yonge Street running north-south, and Queen Street and Dundas Street going east-west. This is near the Toronto waterfront, the CN Tower and St. Lawrence Market. This shows the location of the cruise terminal and the CN Tower.
This shows the location of the Toronto Cruise Terminal.
Chapter 9. CN Tower. The CN Tower is a communications and observation tower completed in 1976. Its name CN originally referred to Canadian National, the railway company that built the tower.
The CN Tower, at 553.3 meters, 1,815 feet, held the record for the world's tallest freestanding structure for 32 years until 2007, and was the world's tallest tower until 2009, being overtaken by Burj Khalifa and Canton Tower, respectively.
The CN Tower is now the 9th tallest tower in the world and remains the tallest freestanding structure in the Western Hemisphere. The CN Tower is a signature icon of Toronto's skyline and attracts more than 2 million international visitors annually. Edge Walk on the CN Tower is the world's highest full-circle hands-free walk. It is on a 5 feet, 1.5 m, wide ledge encircling the top of the tower's central pod. 1,168 feet, 116 stories, above the ground.
Visitors walk in groups of 6 while attached to an overhead safety rail via a trolley and harness system. Edge walk runs for 1.5 hours, with the outdoor walk lasting approximately 30 minutes. Tickets cost $225 Canadian dollars.
This shows the location of the CN Tower.
Chapter 10. The St. Lawrence Market is a major public market in the Old Town District of Toronto. A public market has been held at the St. Lawrence Market since 1803. This shows the location of the St. Lawrence Market along Front Street East and Jarvis Street in the St. Lawrence neighborhood of downtown Toronto. Chapter 11. The Royal Ontario Museum, in French, Musée Royal de l'Ontario, is a museum of art, world culture and natural history. It is one of the largest museums in North America and the largest in Canada. The Royal Ontario Museum opened in 1914 and now attracts more than 1 million visitors every year, making it the most visited museum in Canada. The museum has more than 6 million items and 40 galleries. The diverse collections of world culture and natural history contribute to its international reputation.
The museum contains notable collections of dinosaurs, minerals and meteorites, Near Eastern and African art, art of East Asia, European history, and Canadian history.
This shows the location of the Royal Ontario Museum on Bloor Street.
Chapter 12. The Royal Alexandra Theatre, commonly known as the Royal Alex, was built in 1907. The Royal Alexandra Theatre is North America's oldest continuously operating legitimate theatre.
The Royal Alexandra Theatre has 1,497 seats. This shows the location of the Royal Alexandra Theatre near King and Simcoe Street. Chapter 13. The University of Toronto is a public research university founded by Royal Charter in 1827 as King's College, the first institution of higher learning in the colony of Upper Canada. The University of Toronto comprises 11 colleges, which differ in character and history, each with substantial autonomy in financial and institutional affairs.
According to various major publications, the university is commonly ranked as the best Canadian university, by a significant margin. The University of Toronto received the most annual scientific research funding of any Canadian university. It was the birthplace of insulin and stem cell research and the first practical electron microscope.
The University of Toronto has educated 3 Governors General of Canada, 4 Prime Ministers of Canada, 4 foreign leaders, and 14 Justices of the Supreme Court, 10 Nobel laureates, 3 Turing Awards winners, 94 Rhodes Scholars and 1 Fields Medalist have been affiliated with the university.
This shows the location of the University of Toronto.
Chapter 14. The Distillery District was home to the Goodnor and Wirtz Distillery in the 1860s. The Distillery Historic District is a commercial and residential district that contains numerous cafes, restaurants, and shops housed within heritage buildings of the former Goodnor and Wirtz Distillery.
The district comprises more than 40 heritage buildings and 10 streets,
and is the most extensive collection of Victorian-era industrial architecture in North America. The district was designated a National Historic Site of Canada in 1988.
Trinity Street is the Distillery District's widest street and serves as a public square for the community.
This shows the location of the Distillery Historic District.
Chapter 15. The Spadina Historic House and Gardens is a historic mansion on Spadina Road in Toronto. The Spadina Historic House and Gardens Museum preserves the house much as it existed and developed historically.
The house's art, decor and architecture reflect the contemporary styles of the 1860s through the 1930s, including Victorian, Edwardian, arts and crafts, Art Deco, Art Nouveau and Colonial Revival styles.
The museum is decorated in the style of the interwar era of the 1920s and 1930s.
Chapter 16. Kensington Market and Spadina Avenue.
Kensington Market is a distinctive multicultural neighborhood of downtown Toronto. The market is an older neighborhood, one of the city's most well-known, and is a National Historic Site of Canada. Kensington Market is the bohemian heart of Canada. It has numerous independent stores, restaurants, bars and shops. Almost any food in the world can be found in Kensington Market. Kensington Market is filled with food stores, bakeries, boutiques, and restaurants. Spadina Avenue is one of the most prominent streets in Toronto. It changes in different neighborhoods as it passes through the western downtown section. This shows the location of Spadina Avenue in the Kensington Market at number 19.
Chapter 17. Chinatown has a high concentration of Chinese residents and businesses extending along Dundas Street West and Spadina Avenue west of the city's centre.
Chinatown is a major Chinese-Canadian community in the Greater Toronto Area. This is a profusion of signs in Chinatown.
This shows the location of Chinatown near number 19.
Chapter 18. Casa Loma, Spanish for Hill House, is a Gothic Revival-style mansion and garden in Midtown Toronto that is now a historic house museum.
Casa Loma was constructed from 1911 to 1914 as a residence for financier Sir Henry Pellet.
The round room is designed to fit beneath the castle's tower. This room is notable for its doors and windows, which curve to follow the room's shape.
Due to its unique architectural character, Casa Loma has been a famous filming location for movies and television.
Chapter 19. Eaton Centre.
The Toronto Eaton Centre is a shopping mall and office complex in the downtown core of Toronto. It was named after the Eaton's department store chain that once anchored it. The Eaton Centre attracts the most visitors of any of Toronto's tourist attractions. It is the busiest shopping mall in North America due to extensive transit access, downtown location, and tourist traffic.
The Eaton Centre receives about 50 million visitors annually. More than either of the two busiest malls in the U.S., Mall of America and the Alamo Centre.
This shows the location of the Toronto Eaton Centre in the heart of downtown Toronto.
PATH is a network of underground pedestrian tunnels, elevated walkways, and at-grade walkways connecting the office towers of downtown Toronto.
PATH is more than 30 kilometers, 19 miles, long. According to Guinness World Records, PATH is the largest underground shopping complex in the world. With 372,000 square meters, 4 million square feet, of retail space.
This shows the extensive network of the PATH.
The PATH network's northern point is the Toronto Coach Terminal at Dundas Street and Bay Street, while its southerly point is Water Park Place on Queens Quay. Its main axes of walkways generally parallel Yonge Street and Bay Street.
This is a section of PATH in the financial district. Note the PATH signage shown hanging from the ceiling.
Chapter 20. Fort York is a historic site of military fortifications and related buildings on the west side of downtown Toronto.
Fort York was built by the British Army and Canadian militia troops in the late 18th and early 19th centuries to defend the settlement and new capital of Upper Canada from the threat of a military attack, principally from the newly independent United States.
Fort York was designated a National Historic Site in 1923.
This shows the location of Fort York near the waterfront.
This shows the location of Fort York at number 14.
Chapter 21. The Art Gallery of Ontario, IGO, in French, Musée des Beaux-Arts de l'Ontario, has more than 90,000 works spanning the 1st century to the present day and is one of the most extensive galleries in North America. The Art Gallery of Ontario has art from Canada, Renaissance and Baroque eras, Europe, Africa, and Oceania, and a modern and contemporary collection.
This shows the location of the Art Gallery of Ontario with respect to the Eaton Centre.
Chapter 22. The Hockey Hall of Fame is a museum dedicated to the history of ice hockey.
The Hockey Hall of Fame has exhibits about players, teams, National Hockey League records, memorabilia and trophies in the Stanley Cup.
The Hockey Hall of Fame was relocated to downtown Toronto in 1993 and is now housed in a historic Bank of Montreal building. The World of Hockey Zone opened in 1998 and is dedicated to international ice hockey.
This shows the location of the Hockey Hall of Fame at number 18.
Chapter 23. The Bata Shoe Museum is a footwear museum at Bloor Street and St. George Street. The museum exhibits footwear from around the world
and has over 13,500 items from throughout history and the present. It is the only museum in North America dedicated solely to the history of footwear.
This shows the location of the Bata Shoe Museum at number 4.
Chapter 24. Hop-on hop-off bus tours.
For the first-time visitor to Toronto, an excellent way to see the sights and get acquainted with the city is by a hop-on hop-off bus tour, such as City Sightseeing Toronto.
This shows the route of one such tour offered by City Sightseeing. A City Sightseeing Toronto ticket gets you a hop-on hop-off sightseeing ticket valid for up to 48 hours and includes a Harbour and Islands cruise. The Harbour and Islands cruise has commentary as the boat goes through the Toronto Inner Harbour. The Harbour and Islands cruise boat docks at the foot of Harbourfront Centre's West Pier, stop number 17. The cruise lasts 45 minutes. This is a list of stops of the City Sightseeing Toronto hop-on hop-off sightseeing bus.
Throughout the peak summer months, the buses come by every 15 minutes.
This shows the route of the City Sightseeing Tour of Toronto.
Narration is available in English, French, German, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, Cantonese, and Mandarin.
Chapter 25. The climate of Toronto. Will it be hot? Or will it be cold in Toronto?
The average high and low temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit throughout the year in Toronto.
Here are the average high and low temperatures in degrees Celsius throughout the year in Toronto. Rainfall in Toronto. Here is the average precipitation in inches throughout the year in Toronto. The total yearly rainfall is 34 inches, or 853 millimeters.
Here is the average precipitation in millimeters throughout the year in Toronto.
Chapter 27. Money of Canada.
Currency exchange rates can change daily. For the latest exchange rate, click on this icon.
$1 equals 1.29 Canadian dollars. 1 Canadian dollar equals 0.77 US dollars.
This is a 1 Canadian dollar of 2012. It is colloquially called a loonie because of the picture of a loon on one side of the coin. A loon is a widespread bird in Canada and resembles a duck. Recommended videos, Toronto.
Recommended video, Top 10 Best Places to Visit in Toronto, Canada Travel Guide.
Recommended video, Toronto Vacation Travel Guide Expedia.
Recommended video, History of Toronto.
Recommended video, Birth of a City, The Story of Toronto. Recommended video, The History of Canada Explained in 10 Minutes. The Maple Leaf Forever.
Table of Contents, Toronto.
Thanks for watching.